On a frozen morning, a powerful man almost walked past a little girl sitting silently on a bench. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She whispered one sentence about her breathing, and that quiet truth stopped him cold, unraveling a secret that would change both their lives forever. Winter didn't arrive in Frostmere with drama. It came the way exhaustion comes, quiet, constant, and certain it had nowhere else to go. The sidewalks wore a thin glaze of ice that looked harmless until it stole your footing. The river at the edge of downtown breathed out mist in slow, heavy coils, like something asleep but uneasy. Miles Harrow, 38, stepped out of the glass tower he called home. The lobby's warmth sealed behind him like a door on a different life. His coat was perfectly cut. His gloves had never known real weather. His mind was already sprinting investor call acquisition notes, a briefing that would decide whether millions moved left or right on a spreadsheet. A voice flowed through his earpiece, his assistant calm and practiced reciting the day like a script. Miles nodded as he walked, eyes forward, pace clean and efficient. Efficiency had been his armor for years. The fewer detours, the fewer feelings. The fewer feelings, the fewer problems. Then the rhythm broke. A corner of the public square, a bench, and on it, a child. She sat very still, shoulders drawn inward, arms wrapped around herself as if she were holding her body together. No sign, no waving, no begging. Just a thin, faded dress meant for a warmer world. People streamed past her like water around a stone, a man arguing into his phone, a woman balancing coffee cups, a teenager laughing at something on a screen. No one stopped long enough to become responsible. Miles felt the familiar reflex rise up. Someone else will handle it. The lie that keeps cities moving. He took one more step, already returning to numbers. Then the girl lifted her head. Her eyes met his. Not accusing, not pleading. Just tired, like she had been waiting for something too long and had stopped expecting the world to notice. Miles slowed without deciding to. For an instant, the square went quiet inside him. Not because the city paused. It didn't. But because something in him did. And he realized with a strange, uncomfortable clarity, the bench wasn't the coldest thing in this moment. Up close, the girl looked even smaller than the bench made her seem. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks in damp strands. Her hands trembled, not dramatically, not in a way that demanded attention, just enough to be seen by anyone willing to truly look. "Mister," she said. Her voice was so quiet it nearly vanished beneath footsteps and traffic. Miles leaned in, unsure he heard her at all. He expected the usual asks: money, food, a ride, anything he could solve quickly and hand off to the universe. But she didn't ask. She offered a fact, the way someone reports the temperature. "My chest feels tight." The words hit harder than crying would have. Crying invited sympathy. This invited responsibility. Miles's gaze flicked around, instinctive, searching for an adult who should already be here, a uniform, a siren, anything that would let him tell himself he'd done enough by noticing. Nothing changed. People kept walking. The city kept breathing, indifferent and steady. "What's your name?" Miles asked, keeping his voice low like he was afraid volume might break her. A pause, like she was checking whether names mattered to strangers. "Ren," she whispered. "Ren." The name settled in the air between them, suddenly heavy. A name made her real. Real made it harder to step away. "You're cold," Miles said, and hated how late it sounded. Ren nodded once. "It's okay." It didn't sound like courage. It sounded like practice. Without announcing it, Miles unbuttoned his coat and slid it off. He draped it around her shoulders, slowly, carefully, no grabbing, no crowding. The fabric swallowed her frame. Warmth, weight, shelter. Ren's fingers clutched the sleeves immediately, knuckles whitening. "I won't take it," she blurted. "I can give it back. You don't have to," Miles said. "It's just to keep you warm." Her eyes lifted to his again. This time something new flickered there. Not gratitude, not relief, surprise pure and sharp that someone had stopped. How long have you been sitting here? Miles asked. Wren shrugged, small and careful, like even time was something she didn't want to claim. I wait sometimes. For who, my mom? No anger, no complaint, just a quiet acceptance that made Miles's stomach tighten. She works nearby. A gust of wind cut across the square, and Wren shivered harder this time. She pulled her knees together, trying to make herself smaller against the cold. Miles saw the way she did it. Automatic practiced, like a child who had learned the safest way to exist was to take up as little space as possible. We're going somewhere warm, Miles said, choosing each word like it mattered. I want to get you checked. Just to be safe. Wren's eyes flicked to the street, then back to him. Her voice dropped to a whisper that carried more history than a 6-year-old should have. I'm not in trouble. The sentence landed like a crack through glass. Kids didn't invent that. They learned it. No, Miles said immediately, steady and clear. You're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. She studied his face not for kindness, but for consistency. Like she'd seen kind faces before that still walked away. Miles raised his hand, not toward her, but toward the curb. A taxi rolled closer, tires hissing on slush. He opened the back door and stepped aside, giving her space to choose. Wren hesitated, then slid in quietly, still wrapped in his coat, like it might vanish if she breathed too hard. Miles got in after her, and without looking dramatic, reached up and removed his earpiece. The voice of his assistant cut off mid-sentence. Silence. The taxi heater hummed soft and steady. Wren sat on the far side, hands hidden in the sleeves, breath small and measured. Hospital, she asked when she noticed the direction. Just to check your breathing, Miles said. You told me your chest feels tight. That matters. Wren stared down at her lap. It's probably nothing. Miles didn't argue. He only held the decision steady the way a handrail holds you when the steps are icy. For the first time that morning, his schedule wasn't leading. He was. The hospital doors slid open with a soft hiss, releasing a breath of warm air that rushed over Wren like permission. Her shoulders loosened a fraction, not relief, just the smallest surrender. Miles felt it beside her the way a room changes when heat replaces endurance. A nurse looked up from the desk, eyes alert but kind. Hi there. What can we help with? Miles kept his voice even. I found her outside in the cold. She says her chest feels tight. I'd like her seen right away. The nurse crouched to Wren's level, not crowding, not rushing. Sweetheart, what's your name, Wren? She whispered. Okay, Wren, the nurse said. Like the name belonged here. We're going to take good care of you. Things appeared without ceremony, a warm blanket, a rolling bed that looked too big, a pulse ox clip that glowed like a tiny star. Every step was explained before it happened. Wren listened closely, nodding when prompted, answering like a child who'd learned that cooperation kept the world calm. Miles stayed close, not hovering, not claiming. A steady post. When does it feel tight? The nurse asked. When it's cold, Wren said. When I walk far. Sometimes when I'm just sitting. No panic. No drama. Just truth. Miles' phone vibrated, calendar alerts, stacking like falling tiles. He turned the screen face down. Dr. Selena Park arrived with a calm that filled the space before she spoke. She knelt near Wren's bed, smile, gentle voice, warm. Hi, Wren. I'm Dr. Park. I'm going to listen to your lungs and ask a few questions, okay? Wren nodded too quickly. The stethoscope was warm. Dr. Park moved slowly, narrating each step. Deep breath in and out. Perfect. Her expression didn't sharpen into alarm. It shifted, focused, controlled. She stepped aside with Miles' voice low. Her oxygen saturation is lower than I'd like. Miles kept his face still. What does that mean? It means we don't ignore it, Dr. Park said. Kids don't compensate this well unless they've been dealing with it a while. A clipboard appeared. "Sir," the nurse said gently. "Are you her parent or guardian?" "No," Miles replied. "I brought her in." The nurse nodded. "We'll contact her guardian. You can stay as support while we do intake." At the word guardian, Wren's eyes flicked to Miles' quick searching, and Miles understood this wasn't only about breathing. It was about being alone when your body finally asked for help. Janelle Ortiz, the hospital social worker, entered with a folder tucked under her arm and a presence that didn't accuse. She didn't thank Miles like he was a hero. She spoke to him like an adult who had stepped in. "Mr. Harrow," she said quietly. "Thank you for bringing Wren in." "Of course," Miles answered. "Have you reached her mother?" Janelle exhaled. "We're trying. The number goes straight to voicemail." Wren stirred at the word voicemail, eyes opening to slits like sleep itself wasn't safe when adults couldn't be found. Janelle lowered her voice and knelt to Wren's level. "Sweetheart, did your mom say where she'd be today?" Wren shook her head. "Work." Miles felt the weight of that word. Work, how often it explained absence without meaning to. Janelle opened the file. Wren called her. Age 6. Address Riverside Gardens, Unit B12. Miles repeated it under his breath. Riverside Gardens sat near the old industrial bend of the river. He'd seen it once on a map during a briefing. He kept his expression neutral. "We follow standard procedure when a child arrives without a guardian present," Janelle said. "It's not punishment. It's protection." "Protection," Wren whispered, sitting up straighter. Janelle smiled, immediate and warm. "It means you won't be alone. Adults will make sure you're cared for while we contact your mom." A nurse offered a small stuffed fox from a donation cart. Wren accepted it carefully, as if it were borrowed. Her fingers curled around it tight. A beat passed. Then Wren spoke, not to anyone in particular. "People leave." Miles didn't rush to contradict her. He turned to Janelle, instead, voice steady. "What are the legal steps for me to remain here with her today while you work on contacting her mother?" Janelle blinked, surprised not by the request, but by its precision. "You can stay as support," she said. "If we need permissions, we'll explain everything transparently." Outside the window, snow drifted past the glass like slow confetti. Inside, a child held a small fox and waited to see if adults meant what they said. Miles felt the quiet certainty settle in. He wasn't leaving yet. Time in the hospital moved differently, measured in soft footsteps, distant beeps, and the slow arrival of answers. Wren dozed as warmth and oxygen did their quiet work. A nurse tucked the blanket higher around her shoulders. She didn't protest. She didn't cling. She simply breathed. Janelle returned with a small plastic bin. "These are Wren's belongings," she said gently. "Standard procedure." Inside, worn sneakers with thinning soles, a cracked hair clip, a faded blue backpack. Miles hesitated before opening it, like he was stepping into something private. Crayons, short, blunted from use, and a folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully. A drawing, a river colored so dark it was nearly black. On one side, a small square labeled home. On the other, tall, jagged shapes with thin gray lines drifting upward. Above them, in uneven letters, North Lake. Dr. Park stepped closer. "Kids draw what they see," she said softly, "or what they feel." "It's observational," Janelle added. "Not dramatic." Wren stirred, half awake. "You saw it," she murmured. "Yes," Miles said, folding the paper back where it belonged. "It's very detailed. The river used to be lighter," Wren said, "before it smelled funny." Dr. Park's gaze flicked to Janelle, quiet understanding passing between professionals. That evening, Janelle spoke carefully. "If we can't reach your mom tonight, Wren, you'll stay here so doctors can keep helping you. We'll make sure you're with adults whose job is to keep you safe." "Somewhere new?" Wren asked. "Possibly temporary," Janelle said honestly. The room went very quiet. Wren slid off the bed, not running, not panicking, and walked to Miles. Please, she said, close but not touching. I'll be very quiet. Miles knelt immediately. Ren, none of this is because you did something wrong. He turned to Janelle. Is there a temporary medical support designation? Janelle nodded slowly. There is. Ren looked between them. Does that mean you stay? Miles didn't rush. He met her eyes fully. Yes. That means I stay as long as it's done properly. Her shoulders sagged in visible relief, not excitement, relief. As Janelle left to bring the forms, Ren climbed back into bed, exhaustion finally winning. She held the fox to her chest. And Miles realized something quietly profound. Temporary, when done right, wasn't abandonment. It was a bridge. The conference room off the pediatric wing was small and windowless, lit by a single fluorescent panel that hummed like a held breath. A neat stack of forms waited on the table, titles, heavy with words like designation, oversight, temporary. Miles read them the way he read contracts, slowly, without ego, understanding that signatures were not gestures. They were doors. Janelle Ortiz pointed with a capped pen. This allows you to remain with Ren during treatment and make limited decisions under hospital supervision. Miles nodded. And this doesn't remove her mother from anything. Correct, Janelle said. It protects Ren while we locate Marin. Nothing more. Miles signed, steady, deliberate. Each page felt like a choice he couldn't outsource. When he stood, the hum in the room seemed to quiet, as if the building itself acknowledged the decision. Back in the room, Ren stirred. Her eyes opened to half moons. You came back, she murmured. I said I would, Miles replied, pulling the chair close but leaving space. He'd learned that closeness didn't mean crowding. The lady said papers mean rules, Ren said. They do, Miles answered honestly. Rules that keep you safe. Ren considered this. Are rules forever? Sometimes, he said. These ones are just for now. Satisfied enough, she nodded and drifted again. A nurse checked the monitor, smiled. She's stabilizing. We'll keep her overnight. Miles's phone buzzed board alerts, stacking, polite and insistent. He turned it face down. Later, when the lights dimmed, Ren whispered without opening her eyes. Will you still be here in the morning? Miles didn't hesitate. Yes. The word landed softly and stayed. As Ren slept, Miles felt a calm he didn't recognize, not relief, not triumph. Alignment. His life had been built to move quickly past things. Tonight it was built to stay. And staying, he realized, wasn't passive. It was an active, steady choice, made once, then made again. Morning filtered through blinds and hospital glass. Ren woke slowly, testing the day the way she tested her breath, carefully, without demanding anything from it. She noticed Miles first still in the chair, coffee gone cold in his hands. You didn't leave, she said, more statement than question. No, he replied. I stayed. She sat up and inhaled. Easier. Not perfect, but no longer a struggle. The room felt quieter, as if the night had done its work without asking for applause. Dr. Selena Park returned with a tablet. Oxygen levels are improving, she said. That's a good sign. No immediate danger. Ren listened like a student. Can I walk with supervision? Dr. Park smiled. Ren slid her feet into socks, concentrating like it mattered. Miles offered his hand, open, patient. She took it. Together they walked the hallway past murals of animals and clouds, the world narrowed to careful steps and steady breathing. Most people don't wait, Ren said suddenly. Miles glanced down. What do you mean? They say they'll come back, she replied. Then something else happens. He stopped walking, crouched to her level. If I say I'm coming back, I mean it. She studied his face, weighing the words like a coin, checking for truth. At last she nodded. Okay. Janelle met them near the nurse's station. We still haven't reached Marin, she said gently. But we're following leads. Ren nodded, calm-faced. Her fingers tightened around Miles's sleeve. Janelle turned to him. If this takes longer, the designation can be extended, with oversight. Only if you're willing. Miles looked at Wren, standing taller than yesterday, breathing a little easier, trusting a little more. I'm willing. Wren's eyes widened. Even if it takes a while, even then. Her shoulders relaxed, not because the problem was solved, but because someone wasn't leaving while it wasn't. And Miles felt it settle in patience, wasn't waiting for the end. It was staying through the middle. That afternoon, with hospital approval and documentation, Miles drove to Riverside Gardens. He didn't arrive like an owner. He introduced himself, explained the situation, asked permission. Everything clean. Everything recorded. The complex rose in muted gray paint, peeling softly, not dramatically. No alarms, no signs, just the quiet confidence of neglect that had learned to be invisible. Near the river, the air held a faint metallic edge subtle enough to ignore unless you stood still long enough to notice. Unit B-12 was modest, clean but worn. Inside, the air felt heavier than it should. On the table sat neatly stacked folders, printed emails, handwritten notes, dates circled with careful pen. Beside them labeled jars of water. Tap morning, river after rain, kitchen night. This wasn't panic. It was persistence. Miles photographed everything with permission, evidence, not spectacle. On the refrigerator hung a child's drawing, the same river dark on one side. The factory's name written in uneven letters, North Lake. Back at the hospital, Wren was awake when he returned. You went somewhere, she said. Yes, Miles answered. I saw your home. Her eyes searched his. Is it bad? No, he said carefully, but it needs help. She nodded, accepting nuance because she'd learned the world was rarely simple. Miles shared what he found with Dr. Park and Janelle, photos, notes, locations. I want independent verification, he said. Transparent. By the book. Dr. Park nodded. Good. Wren doesn't need drama. She needs safety. Through the glass, Wren colored quietly. The river on the page was lighter today, still shaded in places, but changing. Miles realized the tension wasn't in confronting villains. It was in whether adults would finally do the slow, correct work before a child learned another survival skill she shouldn't need. The hospital corridor felt narrower after Riverside Gardens. Not physically, emotionally. Miles carried the images with him like an aftertaste. He couldn't rinse away the jars of water, the careful labels, the patience in Maren Calder's handwriting. Persistence without power. Truth without volume. In Wren's room afternoon, light slanted across the floor. She sat by the window, coloring slowly, the stuffed fox tucked beneath her arm. Miles didn't interrupt. He had learned that silence when chosen was a kind of respect. Dr. Selene Park joined him at the door. You saw the apartment? Yes, Miles said. And the river. Her nod was small. Environmental exposure would explain the symptoms. It wouldn't excuse them, but it would explain them. Janelle Ortiz arrived with her tablet. We confirmed Maren filed multiple reports with the city over the past year. Air-water odor complaints. They were logged. Then stalled. Wren looked up at the word stalled. Like waiting, she asked. Janelle smiled gently. Yes, like waiting too long. Miles felt something cold settle behind his ribs, not anger, not yet. Recognition. Systems didn't fail loudly. They failed by delay, by asking people to get tired before anything changed. He didn't raise his voice. He asked for steps. Independent testing. Third-party labs. Transparent chain of custody. Janelle studied him. You're careful. I don't want this to become a story, Miles replied. I want it to become a fix. Dr. Park approved the plan. We'll coordinate medically. Environmental confirmation gives us leverage without spectacle. Inside the room, Wren switched crayons. The river on the page was still dark in places, but lighter than yesterday. Do people get in trouble for making the river sick? She asked, not accusing, curious. Miles chose honesty without fear, sometimes. But first people have to listen. She nodded like that made sense. It did to her. That evening, as monitors hummed softly, Wren grew tired. Miles pulled the chair closer, not too close, and read quietly from a library book about forests that healed after fires. No grand metaphors, just time and care. Before sleeping, Wren asked if my mom tried and nobody listened. Does that mean she did it wrong? Miles felt the question land where answers mattered. No, he said. It means she kept going even when it was hard. That's doing it right. Wren closed her eyes, Fox tucked tight. Outside the window, the river moved on, still burdened, but no longer unseen. Janelle came with news the next afternoon. Not hurried, not dramatic, the kind of news delivered when accuracy matters more than speed. We found your mom, she told Wren, kneeling so the words didn't fall from above. She's safe. Wren didn't jump, she didn't cry. She exhaled long and deep like her body had been holding something fragile for days. Is she tired? Wren asked. Janelle smiled softly. Yes, but she wants to see you. Miles watched Wren process the information, the way she processed everything carefully, without asking for guarantees. Trust for her was a bridge built plank by plank. The reunion was arranged without spectacle. No announcements, no crowd, just a knock at the door. Maren Calder stood there thinner than her photo exhaustion etched gently into her face. Her eyes found Wren immediately. Wren, she whispered. Wren sat up slowly, studying her mother like she might vanish if approached too fast. You came back, she said. I promised, Maren replied, kneeling careful not to overwhelm. Their foreheads touched. No rush, no tears for an audience. Just contact proof. Miles stepped back. Janelle stayed nearby. Dr. Park watched quietly, respecting the moment. I was trying to make it better, Maren said to Wren. I didn't want you to worry. Wren nodded. I waited. Later plans were discussed in low voices, temporary relocation. Away from the river, continued medical monitoring, environmental remediation, documented, supervised, slow enough to be real. Janelle turned to Miles in the hallway. Your involvement has been appropriate and transparent. I wasn't trying to replace anyone, he said. You didn't, she replied. You protected space until the truth could arrive. Miles leaned against the wall, eyes closed for a single breath. This wasn't a victory. It was alignment. Back in the room, Wren caught his eye. You stayed, she said. Yes, he answered. Thank you for stopping. Miles smiled, gentle. Thank you for telling me how you felt. And for the first time since winter arrived, Frostmere felt capable of change, not because someone shouted, but because someone waited long enough for truth to walk back in on its own. Temporary housing didn't sound like much until you opened the windows. The air inside the new apartment was neutral. No metallic edge, no quiet warning that your body had learned to read. Wren tested it, the way she tested everything now, one careful breath at a time. It smells like nothing, she said. Maren smiled, tired, but relieved. That's the point. The rooms were simple. Light moved easily from window to floor. Wren explored without rushing, sitting on the carpet to draw, lying still, to feel how breathing felt when it wasn't work. Miles visited with boundaries. He never arrived unannounced. He never stayed too long. He brought books, rivers, animals, places that changed slowly. Consistency, not gifts. At a follow-up appointment, Dr. Park reviewed the charts. Your oxygen levels are stable. Keep resting. Keep listening to your body. Wren took that seriously. Is breathing supposed to feel easy all the time? Not always, Dr. Park said. But it shouldn't feel like effort. Wren nodded. It's easier now. Maren's shoulders loosened at that, just a fraction, but enough. Environmental reports moved forward. Independent labs confirmed what jars and drawings had already suggested. The city responded without fireworks permits, monitoring stations, cleanup plans. Slow, correct. One evening, Wren taped a new drawing to the wall. The river curved bright. The factory was smaller, farther away. 3 figures stood near the bank, separate, close. "It's not finished," Wren said. Miles looked at it a long moment. "It's better." Later at dinner, conversation stayed ordinary school plans, a story about a classmate, a laugh that came easily. Mid-sentence, Wren paused and took a deep breath. Miles froze instinctively. Wren smiled. That one felt good. Marin reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I love hearing that." Outside, the river moved on, still imperfect, but watched now. Inside, a child breathed without counting, and Miles understood something quietly essential. Real change rarely announces itself. It arrives softly, the way safety does when no one is waiting on a bench anymore. Frostmere didn't change overnight. It never did. The city had learned to move quickly past discomfort, to smooth rough edges with delays and polite acknowledgments. But something subtle began to happen after Wren left the hospital, something that couldn't be undone with silence. It started with paperwork. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just forms that didn't disappear this time. Environmental reports were reopened. Independent lab results were attached. Timelines were cross-checked. What Marin Calder had sent for more than a year, emails, photos, measurements, was suddenly treated not as noise but as evidence. Miles insisted on one thing and one thing only: transparency. No press, no public statements, no quiet settlements, just verification that would hold up in daylight, in courtrooms, in community meetings, where people had learned to stop expecting honesty. At Riverside Gardens, monitoring stations appeared along the riverbank, thin metal poles with blinking indicators. Children asked what they were. Adults gave real answers instead of vague ones. The river didn't look cleaner yet, but it felt watched. Marin attended the first community meeting with Wren sitting beside her, coloring at a folding table. Adults spoke carefully, some defensive, some exhausted, some quietly relieved that someone else had finally said the words out loud. Wren didn't listen closely to the speeches. She listened to tone. She colored the river lighter than before. Miles stayed near the back of the room, not speaking unless asked. When he did speak, it was short, procedural, boring in the best possible way. "This isn't about blame," he said once. "It's about correction." People shifted at that, not because it was comforting, but because it was true. Back at the temporary apartment, Wren lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling, breathing slowly. She did it on purpose now, the way kids do something once it stops being frightening. "Mom," she said, "if the river gets better, will it remember being sick?" Marin thought before answering. "Maybe," she said, "but remembering doesn't mean it stays that way." Wren accepted that. She'd learned already that memory didn't disappear just because danger did. That night, Miles visited briefly. He brought a book about wetlands, how they clean water by slowing it down, letting plants do patient work. He didn't read the whole thing. He read a page, then stopped. "You don't have to finish," Wren told him. "I know," he said. "I just wanted to start." She smiled at that, a real smile, not big, not cautious, just there. After Miles left, Marin stood at the window, watching the river's dark line beyond the buildings. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was standing alone against it. The city hadn't apologized. Not yet. But it had paused. And sometimes that was the beginning of listening. Weeks passed, and routine began to feel like safety instead of waiting. Wren's follow-up appointments became quieter. Dr. Selena Park smiled more easily now, flipping through charts without that tight focus that meant concern. "You're doing exactly what your body needs," she told Wren. "Resting, listening." Wren took that seriously, the way she took all instructions that respected her intelligence. She rested when her chest asked for it. She stopped running before exhaustion turned sharp. She learned that stopping wasn't failure, it was information. Miles returned to his world, but it no longer felt sealed off. Boardrooms sounded different when you knew how silence could harm. He still made decisions that moved numbers, but now he saw the echo, how spreadsheets eventually became air-water bodies. He never overstepped. He didn't buy solutions. He funded process-independent testing, community oversight, long-term monitoring that couldn't quietly disappear. Marin noticed. "You don't rush," she said once. "I've rushed my whole life," Miles replied. "This needs the opposite." Ren liked watching him and her mother talk, not because of what they said, but because neither of them seemed to be leaving mid-sentence. One afternoon, Ren handed Miles a new drawing. The river was clearer now. Trees lined the bank. The factory still existed, but smaller farther away, like something losing its grip. "It's not gone," Ren said, almost apologetic. "That's okay," Miles said. "Things don't disappear just because we want them to. They change because we keep working." She nodded, satisfied with that truth. At school, Ren drew during recess instead of sitting still. Her teacher noticed she didn't stop to catch her breath as often. At home, Marin slept through the night for the first time in months. One evening, as dishes dried on the rack, Ren asked something that made the room still. "People don't have to disappear to move on, right?" Marin froze. Miles didn't answer right away. "No," he said carefully. "Sometimes staying is how you move on." Ren considered this deeply, like it was a rule she might need later. "Okay," she said at last. That word, "okay," no longer sounded like surrender. It sounded like trust. And trust, Miles realized, was heavier than obligation. You couldn't set it down when things became inconvenient. You had to keep choosing it. That night, as Miles walked back to his car, he passed a park bench near the river. He slowed just for a moment. The bench wasn't empty because someone had nowhere to go. It was empty because nobody needed it anymore. He kept walking. Spring came to Frostmere quietly, like a decision made without witnesses. Coats unbuttoned. Windows opened. The river caught light instead of swallowing it. It wasn't perfect. Nothing real ever was, but it moved differently now. Cleaner. Slower. Watched. On a mild afternoon, Marin and Ren walked through the neighborhood park. The air smelled like wet grass and something hopeful. Birds hopped along the path, unbothered by human plans. Ren stopped suddenly. A wooden bench sat beneath a budding tree. Ordinary. Sun warmed. The kind of bench people passed without thinking. Marin slowed beside her. "You okay?" Ren nodded. "Yeah, I just remember benches." Marin didn't rush her. She sat first, leaving a small space. Ren climbed up beside her legs, swinging freely. "This one feels different," Ren said after a moment. "How so?" Marin asked. "It doesn't feel like waiting," Ren replied. "It feels like choosing." Miles watched from a picnic table nearby, coffee untouched. He had learned when to stay back. Some moments needed room. Ren waved him over. Miles approached slowly. "What are we choosing today?" Ren thought hard. "To sit, and then to leave when we want." Miles smiled. "That sounds like a good plan." Ren pulled out her sketchbook and began to draw. The bench, the path, the trees. 3 figures appeared again, one tall, one medium, one small. Close, but not overlapping. "I draw more now," Ren said. "Why?" Miles asked. "It helps me see things when they're not scary anymore." That settled deep in Miles's chest. Healing didn't erase memories. It changed how they were held. A jogger passed, nodding politely. Life moved around them, unremarkable and safe. Ren closed the sketchbook and hopped down. "I'm done here." No hesitation. No need to linger. They walked away from the bench without ceremony. Miles glanced back once. The bench was just a bench again. Wood and metal and sunlight. Nothing more. And he realized that was the quiet miracle. Because the most important change hadn't happened in the river or the city or the paperwork. It had happened in a child who no longer measured the world by how long she had to wait for it to notice her. Spring continued without asking permission, and Frostmere at last let itself breathe. Life didn't become perfect. It became manageable, and that difference mattered. Summer settled over Frostmere in layers of light. The days stretched longer, not louder. Wren's checkups spaced out, no longer clustered with worry. Dr. Celine Park still listened carefully to her lungs, still watched the numbers on the screen, but her brow no longer creased the way it had that first day. "You're stronger," she told Wren during one visit. "Not just physically. You listen to your body now." Wren nodded, serious. She had learned the language of small warnings, the slight tightness, the need to slow, the moment when stillness helped, rather than hurt. She didn't fear those signals anymore. They were information, not danger. Marin noticed the change most at night. Wren slept deeply now. No sudden waking. No shallow breaths counted in the dark. Marin would sit on the edge of the bed sometimes listening, not because she had to, but because she could. The city continued its slow work. Reports turned into permits. Permits turned into action. The riverbanks were tested again and again. Signs went up, not warnings, but explanations. Transparency where there had once been silence. Miles stayed involved, but always one step back from the center. He attended meetings he didn't chair. He funded reviews he didn't control. When people thanked him, he redirected them. "This isn't about me," he said more than once. "It's about not ignoring things next time." Some people nodded. Some didn't. Change always asked more from some than others. One afternoon, Miles walked alone along the river path. The water moved steadily now, catching sunlight in brief flashes. He stopped where Wren's drawing had once shown the darkest patch. He remembered how easily he had almost walked past her. That knowledge didn't shame him anymore, but it didn't let him forget either. At the apartment, Wren sat at the table drawing again. This time the river curved wide and clear. The factory was gone from the page entirely. In its place stood trees, uneven and imperfect. "This one's finished," she said. Miles studied it. "What made you know?" Wren shrugged. "It doesn't feel like I have to fix it anymore." That night, as Miles prepared to leave, Wren asked something quietly. "Do you think bad places know when they stop being bad?" Miles considered. "I think places change when people stop pretending nothing's wrong." She nodded, satisfied. As he walked away, Miles understood something he hadn't before. The last shadows didn't leave all at once. They thinned. They lost their edges. They stopped deciding where the light could go. And that was enough. Normal arrived without ceremony. It looked like mornings where Wren woke up late because the sun, not fear, had nudged her awake. It sounded like dishes clinking in the sink, homework questions asked without urgency, laughter that didn't stop to check whether it was allowed. Wren walked to school now. Not alone, never alone, but without that careful slowness she used to carry. She ran during recess. She stopped when she needed to. Her teacher noticed she no longer chose the quiet corner by default. "She's different," the teacher told Marin one afternoon. "Calmer. More present." Marin smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need explanation. Miles came by for dinner once a week, sometimes twice. He never assumed. He always asked. If Wren needed quiet, he left early. If she wanted to show him a new drawing, he stayed. One evening, as they walked through the park, Wren pointed to a bench near the path. "I sat on one like that," she said casually. Miles didn't tense. He simply nodded. "I know." She studied the bench for a moment, then looked up at him. "It doesn't feel like it did before." "What does it feel like now?" he asked. "Just a bench," she said, slightly surprised by the answer herself. They kept walking. That night, Wren lay in bed staring at the ceiling, not because she was afraid to sleep, but because she was thinking. "Miles," she called softly. Yes, do people forget hard things when they get better? Miles answered honestly. Sometimes. But forgetting isn't the same as healing. What's healing then? Remembering without it hurting every time, he said. She considered that. I think I'm doing that. He smiled in the dark. I think you are too. Outside the city hummed. Not rushing, not frozen, just moving at a human pace. Later that week, Marin received confirmation in writing long-term remediation approved. Continued monitoring guaranteed. Oversight committees formed with community members included. She read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. It's real, she told Ren. Ren nodded. I know. How? Because nobody's telling us to wait anymore. That word wait no longer ruled the room. The day came quietly, the day when nothing hurt. Not in the dramatic sense. No celebration, no marker on a calendar. Just a morning when Ren ran across the grass, stopped to breathe, and realized she didn't need to think about it at all. She laughed at that realization. The laugh startled her. Then it stayed. Miles watched from a nearby table, coffee in hand. He didn't interrupt. He had learned that some victories didn't want witnesses. Marin sat beside him. She doesn't check anymore, she said softly. Miles nodded. That's when you know. They walked together afterward, the three of them, toward the river. The water moved easily now. Children skipped stones. A dog splashed near the edge. Life used the space without fear. Ren knelt and touched the water with her fingers. She didn't pull back. It's cold, she said. But it's okay. Marin's breath caught. Miles looked away, giving her the moment. Ren stood and brushed her hands on her shorts. Can we go? She asked. Anywhere you want, Marin replied. They walked back through the park. Ren stopped once more at a bench different from the first, newer, cleaner. She sat for a few seconds, legs swinging. This one's okay, she said. Then she stood. I don't need it. They kept walking. That evening, Ren drew one last picture of the river. No darkness this time, no factory, just water, trees, and sky. She taped it to the wall and stepped back. Done, she said. Miles felt something loosen inside him, not relief, but gratitude. He hadn't saved anyone. He hadn't fixed everything. He had stopped. And in stopping, he had stayed long enough for the world to become a place where a child no longer measured her life by how much she could endure. Sometimes he realized that was the greatest ending a story could have. Not fireworks, not victory, but a day so gentle it didn't hurt at all. Autumn arrived in Frostmere without apology. The air cooled. Leaves gathered along sidewalks and riverbanks, curling in on themselves like quiet thoughts. Life didn't reverse. It layered. Ren's follow-up appointment that month was almost boring, and that Dr. Selene Park said was the point. Lungs sound clear, she told Ren, smiling as she removed the stethoscope. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Ren nodded, more interested in the fish mural on the wall than the praise. Okay. Outside the clinic, Marin paused as if expecting the old fear to tap her shoulder. It didn't. She let the moment pass. Miles joined them later that afternoon at a small cafe near the river. Not a habit, just a visit. Ren ordered hot chocolate and waited patiently, no tightness in her chest, no counting breaths. Miles noticed anyway. He always noticed. Do you ever think about that day? Ren asked, suddenly stirring her cup. Miles didn't pretend otherwise. Yes. Does it feel big? She asked. He thought carefully. It feels important, not loud. Ren smiled at that. I don't think loud things last. The river behind them moved steadily, reflecting sky instead of shadow. Cleanup markers stood like quiet sentinels along the bank. Not warnings, just reminders that someone was watching now. Later, walking home, Ren stopped to help a younger child who had dropped a mitten. She handed it back without ceremony and kept walking. Marin watched, throat tight, not from fear, but recognition. At home, Ren pulled out an old drawing from the bottom of a drawer, The first one with the dark river and jagged shapes. She studied it for a long time. I don't need this one anymore, she said. Maren didn't rush her. Wren folded the paper neatly and placed it in a box, not thrown away, not displayed. Remembered, but no longer lived in. That night, Miles stood alone on his balcony, city lights spread beneath him. His life looked the same from up here. Meetings, forecasts, clean lines. But he knew better now. The difference wasn't visible from a distance. It lived in smaller choices, slowing down at crosswalks, listening when someone spoke carefully, stopping when something felt wrong, instead of assuming it would solve itself. He hadn't become softer. He had become more precise, and that he realized was what remained after the rescue was over. Attention practiced daily without applause. Winter returned to Frostmere the following year, lighter than before. Not kinder, but familiar. Snow dusted the sidewalks. Breath showed again in pale clouds. Wren walked through the park with Miles one quiet afternoon, boots crunching softly over frost. They didn't plan it. They just ended up there. The bench was still there. Same shape, same placement, different meaning. Wren stopped, looked at it, then sat deliberately. She rested her hands on her knees, feet swinging slightly. Miles stayed standing, not hovering, not leaving. This bench doesn't feel like before, she said. What did it feel like before, he asked. Like I had to stay still so nothing bad would happen, she replied. No drama, just fact. And now, she thought, like I can sit if I want, and leave if I want. She stood almost immediately and brushed off her coat. Decision made. Miles smiled. That's freedom, they walked on. No music, no slow motion, just boots on a path. At school, Wren wrote an essay later that week titled, Things That Changed. She didn't mention names. She wrote about air, about water, about how adults sometimes forgot to stop. Her teacher called Maren that evening, not worried, just impressed. She writes like someone who knows what matters, the teacher said. Maren looked at Wren across the room, drawing quietly. She does. That weekend, a community notice went up, the final remediation phase completed. Monitoring would continue, but the river was officially cleared for normal use. Families gathered not to celebrate, but to exist. Kids skipped stones. Parents talked about ordinary things. Miles didn't attend. He didn't need to. The work was done when it stopped needing him. That night, Wren taped a small note above her desk. 3 words written carefully: stop, listen, stay. She didn't explain it to anyone. She didn't have to. Some lessons weren't meant to be taught out loud. Years later, the story still wasn't dramatic when told correctly. No headlines, no viral clips, no single moment you could freeze and point to as the turning point. Just a sequence of choices made quietly, consistently, without guarantee. Wren grew taller. Her drawings changed: less rivers, more people. She kept the fox on her shelf, faded now, a little crooked. Not because she needed it, but because it had been there. Maren spoke at a city forum once, invited not as a victim, but as a resident. She talked about persistence, about paperwork, about how long it took to be heard. People listened. That mattered. Miles continued his work. He still moved money, still shaped outcomes, but he measured success differently now. He paid attention to the spaces between decisions, to what was being rushed past. One spring afternoon, years after the bench, Wren sat with Miles at a cafe, older now, confident, breath easy, without thought. Do you remember when you stopped? She asked. Yes, he said. I think that's the part people miss, she said. They think helping is doing something big. Miles smiled, quiet. What do you think it is? She looked out at the street, at people walking by. I think it's noticing when something small is asking you not to hurry. Miles felt the truth of it settle, not new, but affirmed. When they stood to leave, Wren paused. Thank you, she said, not ceremonially, not heavy. For what he asked, for staying long enough, she replied. Most people don't. Miles nodded. He didn't answer. Some thanks were meant to echo, not conclude. As he walked away, he passed a bench, different city, different street. Someone sat there scrolling a phone. Someone else hurried past. Life moved. Miles slowed, not because he had to, but because he chose to. And he knew, with the quiet certainty that had reshaped his life, that sometimes the most powerful thing a person could ever do wasn't to fix, wasn't to save, wasn't to be remembered, but simply to stop. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.